Welcome back. You're watching Roundtable and we are with Mr. S.L. Gunasekera, attorney at law. So we just spoke about the concepts of independence in some sense because today is the 62nd independence celebration. And to the question I asked, is it okay to celebrate independence in that sense because we are after a war? What he said was, if that is a question, then you need to ask the question, is it okay to celebrate birthdays? Is it okay to celebrate weddings? And so on and so forth. And also he kept on, he said that there are many people who sort of shed crocodile tears for the IDPs, but there are so many people who were in the refugee camps, the Sinhalese. Did they speak? They raised their voice at the instances like that. So why only the North and East and the Tamil? Why don't you look at the marginalized communities and the people with poverty who belong to other communities like Sinhalese and the Muslims? So he was touching on those aspects, and he raised a pertinent question as to whether there was at least one Tamil politician who was like President Obama in the US, who was able to galvanize support of the masses. And he said, late Mr. Honorable Kadiragama, that he was a true statesman, and if he was contesting for presidency, that he had a chance of winning, and Mr. S.L. Gunasekera would have worked for him full time because he was able to galvanize the support and command that respect. So he asked a present politician, a Tamil politician, is there anybody like Sambandhan or anybody for that matter? Is there somebody like that? So that was a pertinent question he raised, and he was also touching on the aspect of very critically on the PR system, the proportional representation system, which vests enormous power on the party system and gives a lot of power to already power hungry corrupt politicians who deliberately install divides in the society. So according to him, what is important is a democratic system that ensures the participation of the people, that ensures transparency and has less avenues and for corruption, that will expose corruption in a more effective manner. So on that note, we are moving to the second half of the round table, Mr. Gunasekera. Let's touch upon the whole foreign policy aspect. Now, what I mainly want to ask you is that there is a school of thought that says that Sri Lanka and the Sri Lankans has an unfounded fear for the West, and the fact that now we are depending more on China for aid and maybe India for that matter on aid, whether it is also a form of foreign intervention and imperialism. Why only the relations with West is bad? Isn't it the same when you are sort of getting aid and working with China and India for that matter? What do you have to say to that?
Well, my view on that matter is simply this. We are not a country that can submit ourselves to be patronized. Now, India tried that and we succumbed to our cost. The Vadamarach operation was stopped by Jayawardena because of Indian pressure. Now, had India not intervened at that stage, the Tigers would have been finished 23 years ago at Vadamarach. But because of we gave in to the foreigners, the Indians in that instance, so many have died, so many rivers of blood have flown. There have been so much suffering in this country. So many have lost limbs because of that, because of India's treachery at that time and Jayawardena's supine cowardice. Now, what happened thereafter? We found the sanctimonious West. Mr. Bandaranaike called it the rapacious West. I don't know which is a better term, but shall we say it's a cross between the two, rapacious and sanctimonious? Now, they stopped supplying us with arms. They tried to compel us to stop operations against the LTTE. They interfered in our internal affairs in that sense. They allowed the Tigers to operate in their territory. Now, Britain banned the Tigers, but Barasingh was carrying on merrily there. And they were having all kinds of meetings and fund collecting drives and all kinds of things in Britain despite the ban. America, true they banned the LTTE, but then how can they ban Al-Qaeda, not ban the LTTE? Even they have got to have some kind of common sense in doing these things. So, the West as a bloc, which wrote us off, tried to compel us to stop fighting the LTTE, to declare ceasefire, stop giving us any aid in the form of arms or any kind of military equipment when we needed that. Even India, I mean, when Jaffna fell, they said we'll give weapons of defense and offered, I think, to take us, to give us transport our troops out of Jaffna, which means to create a state of Elam there. That's the kind of friend we had. So, we had to turn to those who would help us without conditions, who would give us the assistance we need when we needed help. I mean, what if you saw a friend who can't help us when we are in need? And when we were in need, the West turned their backs on us. So, we turned to those who would help us. China, Iran, maybe Libya, I think Libya too, yes, and whatever other countries.
Myanmar.
Well, they were friends in need. I don't think Myanmar helped us really. But what we needed, when we were in need, they helped us. So, they are friends.
But then again, that's another criticism that is raised, that with respect to the foreign policy, that the fact that we went to, especially not countries like China, but Iran, Libya, and also Myanmar for that matter, was very, the people were very critical, saying that those were countries that did not have a good human rights record, and we had approached them.
You see, my concern, I am speaking personally myself, is not about the internal affairs of other countries, but about how they deal with us. To me, it matters not whether they tyrannize their own people, that is their business. What matters to me is how they help us, how they are in the relationship with us. You would recall what Churchill said in the Second World War, that if Satan turns against Hitler, he will at least speak a good word about Satan in the House of Commons. That is Winston Churchill's statement regarding an entity called Satan. Whether it exists or not, I don't know. But that is what Churchill said, and many people believe that somebody called Satan exists.
So, then at that time, what can we say about the future of foreign policy? That is, how should that be shaped? Now, also keeping in mind the consequences that unraveling after the presidential campaigns and the statements released.
See, I must confess that I am not very conversant with foreign affairs, and said diplomacy is hardly my line, but I would say that as a practical measure, our policy must be to mind our own business. You know, other countries have their affairs. It's none of our business what they do with their countries and their people. But let us try and be friendly with as many as we can, and to give and take, to give them what they want as far as we can, and get from them what we want as far as we can. That must be our policy. That is enlightened self-interest, and self-interest over anything else, because no country gives to any other country anything on the basis of some principle. Principles are for books and for sermons and seminars and things of that nature, where these things are concerned. If a country helps us, it is keeping their interest in mind. They will help us to the extent that they think it will be beneficial to them, not anymore. So, let us not have no illusion about these things and think of the West as angels or somebody else as a set of devils. Each country thinks of itself. We too must think of ourselves and not go to interfere with other people's affairs, but do what we can to get the best out of other countries and to give them in return, because nobody gives anything for nothing, what we can without hurting ourselves, and above all, not to allow any country to patronize us, to dominate us, or to dictate to us. Now, I find that there are some people who say that we must allow some bunch of foreigners to come and investigate our so-called war crimes. Will America allow our people to go to America and investigate their war crimes? If so, why should we let a bunch of Europeans or Western people of Western countries or any other country, be it China, Libya, Iran, or anywhere, to come investigate anything about our internal affairs? That's none of their business. I think we must maintain a sturdy independence, and this is what I respect the President for more than anything else. That is the sturdy independence with which he rebuffed the efforts of the West to interfere in our internal affairs.